Ever feel like no matter how much you do, it's never good enough? Like you're running a never ending race against expectations, your own, society's, and maybe even that Pinterest perfect mom in your head? Welcome to ADHD perfectionism. It's sneaky, it's exhausting, and it keeps us stuck. But today we're breaking the cycle. Let's talk about why ADHD moms struggle with perfectionism, and more importantly, how to let it go without the guilt. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Nostalgic Neurodivergent, where we talk about all things ADHD, parenting, and life, served with a side of nerdy zennial energy. I'm Corey, and today we're diving into one of the biggest struggles that ADHD moms face: perfectionism. So, if you've ever spent way too long on a task because it had to be just right, if you've avoided starting something because you were afraid of failing, or if you constantly feel like you should be doing more, this episode is for you. In this episode, we'll cover why ADHD and perfectionism go hand in hand, the science behind why our brains latch onto all or nothing thinking, how perfectionism fuels burnout and procrastination, and we'll share some simple ADHD-friendly strategies to break free from perfectionism. So, why do ADHD moms struggle with perfectionism? Perfectionism is about wanting to do well. It's about feeling like we have to be perfect to be worthy. And for ADHD moms, this becomes even more complicated. For starters, there's our good old friend, rejection sensitive dysphoria. So we don't just fear these mistakes, we take them personally. Add on the executive dysfunction and procrastination, because if we can't do it perfectly, we're just not going to do it at all. Then you layer on masking and overcompensating, because we spent years of hearing you're not trying hard enough, and that just makes us overcorrect everything. Finally, we add in emotional dysregulation, where one little minor mistake can send us spiraling into shame and self-doubt. So, do you remember the pressure of getting every single detail just right when you were decorating your trapper keeper? That's ADHD perfectionism, except for now. It's our whole life, and the stakes feel so much higher. Perfectionism feels like it keeps us motivated, but in reality, it is the biggest roadblock to progress. First, there's paralysis by analysis, where we get stuck researching, planning, and second guessing instead of doing. Then we have overfunctioning and burnout, where we are going all in on everything, then we crash and we feel like failures. We also deal with never feeling done, and we struggle to recognize the good enough, so we chase impossibly high standards. And then we deal with the avoidance and the guilt cycle, putting things off because of fear of failure, which just leads to even more shame. So, if you can relate to this, think about a time where you may have spent hours designing a birthday invitation, down to the font spacing, and you then realize that you could have just texted the details in 5 minutes. That, my friends, ADHD perfectionism in action. So, we're not aiming for perfect progress, we're aiming for any progress. Here's how we make that shift with some ADHD friendly strategies. First, let's implement the good enough rule. 80% done is still done. Perfectionism is a trap. Then, to back that up, done is better than perfect. Remind yourself, imperfect action beats perfect inaction. Time limited tasks. Set a timer and stop when it goes off. No endless tweaking. And start looking at your mistakes as data. So instead of I failed, try what did I learn? And finally, implement some self compassion practices. Talk to yourself like you would a friend. Think of this like an old school mixtape. Some tracks will have scratch, some transitions won't be smooth, but the vibe is what matters, not whether every second is flawless. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room. And here's your reality check. Perfectionism isn't making you better, it is keeping you stuck. And it's time to let it go. Your worth is not measured by flawless execution. You're already enough as you are. If you're still struggling with this, though, grab my free imposter syndrome guide. It is packed with tools to help you stop second guessing yourself and start embracing progress over perfection. And finally, if you remember anything, remember this: perfectionism isn't protecting you, it's holding you back, and you don't have to live this way. If this episode hit home, share it with a fellow ADHD mom who needs to hear this. And don't forget to grab your free imposter syndrome guide. The link is in the show notes. And just like Alanis Morissette sang, you live, you learn. Mistakes aren't failures, they're part of the journey. I'll talk to you again soon.